Hi, I'm Kitty Feldy. We continue to look through our many episodes of the Book Club for Kids podcast to examine the titles that have been banned or challenged. Today we look at the 1977 Newbery Award-winning novel by Mildred D. Taylor, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. The book has been challenged in school districts from Burbank, California, to Oviedo, Florida, to Huntsville, Alabama, mostly for its use of the N-word. In Burbank, the book was removed from the required reading list, although kids can choose to read the book, and it can be used in small groups after the teacher has undergone training on, quote, facilitating conversations on racism, implicit bias, and racial identity. The author, Mildred D. Taylor, said, "As a parent, I understand not wanting a child to hear painful words, but as a parent, I do not understand not wanting a child to learn about a history that is part of America." Here for you, we present a discussion of Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by a trio of students from the Bronx.
It's the Book Club for Kids.
The Book Club for Kids.
It's the Book Club for Kids podcast.
Hi, I'm Kitty Feldy. This week, we turn back the clock to a difficult period of history in Jim Crow America. The book is the Newbery Award winner, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor. The inequality of that era is illustrated by the separate and unequal distribution of school supplies.
Maybe he could see all the things we need. Current books for all of our subjects, not just somebody's old throwaways. Desks, paper, blackboards, erasers, maps, chalk.
That's our celebrity reader, actress Tracy Lay. Our readers from the Bronx try to imagine living in an earlier era of American history.
Even if you were to make a virtual game of how it felt to be back then, no one can ever feel now the amount of pain people back then had to go through being a slave.
Literary historian Dr. Diane Johnson Feelings says writer Mildred D. Taylor believed in telling children the truth in her books.
It's easier to deal with some things through literature and art rather than experience those things yourself.
This is the Book Club for Kids. We'll tell you how you can be on the show a little later on, but first, let's meet our readers.
My name is Samantha.
Hello, my name is Shannon.
Hello, my name is Jalen. We're 7th graders at Immaculate Conception School in the Bronx at New York.
The book is about a girl in the Logan family after the Civil War when slavery was abolished, and they have to do sharecropping, and they're going through a lot of things.
The book is about a girl named Cassie, and she's part of the Logan family. And her family are going through a time of segregation where black people, they were getting judged by whites based on their appearance.
How would you describe Cassie?
At the beginning, she was a little naive because she didn't know what was going on. She was still young, and as the story prevailed, she started to understand what was really going on and started to find like her own path and why and what she's able to do since she's a free black kid.
To me, I think that Cassie is like really independent because she's not like afraid to like experience what she's going through and like live her expectations.
She has a lot of personalities. She wants revenge at one point from the school bus. Then at another time, she's a little bit nice. She's like anger issues a little bit. She keeps struggling with those emotions. And then at some point, she like learns to overcome the emotions. And she becomes like a little bit more mature and still being like a little kid that people won't like expect much from.
Tell me the difference between the South, where Cassie and her family live, versus present-day Bronx.
So I think the difference between the South and the Bronx today is that back then in the South, whites and blacks, they weren't really getting along that well. The whites were pretty much judging the blacks for like who they were, and there was like a big feud between them. But present day Bronx, blacks and whites and everyone, they're finally friends and they're getting along with each other.
Today, we have like a lot of different cultures in our city, and there's buildings everywhere, and everybody goes to the same school. But when back in that day, everybody would go to different schools, but one school would be better than the other. And people would get treated different ways, and they will not be able to do the same that everybody else does, depending on what color skin they have.
Whoa, that's a big difference. Where I live, I have like a lot of freedom, and I actually can go around and have fun with people. Where Cassie lives, she couldn't really do anything because if a white friend was with her that really respected her, that white friend would be looked down upon because he respects blacks, and whites didn't really respect blacks. Back then, whites and blacks were like separated from each other. It was a real hard time. But now, every single race can be friends with each other and not be looked down upon for being friends with that race.
Well, they make it sound like where we live right now is in a perfect place. Do we live in a perfect world these days?
Oh, not really, because there's a lot of danger happening around. But it's way better from what it is before, because we're stuff slaves now. Because with more people, we can help the earth become a better place.
I say the world our place now is not perfect, but it's better than what it used to be because everybody is not segregated by skin color.
So now I think the world is kind of a better place. It's better than back then because back then it was kind of like a horrific experience for other people because a lot of people went through a lot of tough times and some scary experiences. And now it's kind of peaceful and everyone's getting along. So yeah.
Let's hear a scene from the book just after our heroine Cassie refuses to take a beat-up, outdated textbook from her teacher. The books were hand-me-downs from the white school in town. Cassie's little brother, Little Man's reaction was even more pointed. Our celebrity reader is actress Tracy Lay.
"Just look at that, Mary," Miss Crocker said, thumping the book twice with her forefinger. "A perfectly good book ruined. Look at that broken binding and those footmarks all over it." Mama did not speak as she studied the book. "And here's the one Cassie wouldn't take," she said, placing a second book on Mama's desk with an outraged slam. "At least she didn't have a tantrum and stomp all over hers. I tell you, Mary, I just don't know what got into those children today. I always knew Cassie was rather high-strung, but Little Man, he's always such a perfect little gentleman." Mama glanced at the book I had rejected and opened the front cover so that the offensive pages of both books faced her. "You say Cassie said it was because of this front page that she and Little Man didn't want the books?" Mama asked quietly. "Yes, ain't that something?" Miss Crocker said, forgetting her teacher training school diction in her indignation. "The very idea! That's on all the books, and why they got so upset about it, I'll never know." "You punished them?" asked Mama, glancing up at Miss Crocker. "Well, I certainly did. Whipped both of them good with my hickory stick. Wouldn't you have?" When Mama did not reply, she added defensively, "I had a perfect right to." "Of course you did, Daisy," Mama said, turning back to the books again. "They disobeyed you." But her tone was so quiet and non-committal that I knew Miss Crocker was not satisfied with her reaction. "Well, I thought you would have wanted to know, Mary, in case you wanted to give them a piece of your mind also." Mama smiled up at Miss Crocker and said rather absently, "Yes, of course, Daisy. Thank you." Then she opened her desk drawer and pulled out some paper, a pair of scissors, and a small brown bottle. Miss Crocker, dismayed by Mama's seeming unconcern for the seriousness of the matter, thrust her shoulders back and began moving away from the desk. "You understand that if they don't have those books to study from, I'll have to fail them in both reading and composition, since I plan to base all my lessons around—" She stopped abruptly and stared in amazement at Mama. "Mary, what in the world are you doing?" Mama did not answer. She had trimmed the paper to the size of the books and was now dipping a gray-looking glue from the brown bottle onto the inside cover of one of the books. Then she took the paper and placed it over the glue. "Mary Logan, do you know what you're doing? That book belongs to the county. If somebody from the superintendent's office ever comes down here and sees that book, you'll be in real trouble." Mama laughed and picked up the other book. "In the first place, no one cares enough to come down here. And in the second place, if anyone should come, maybe he could see all the things we need. Current books for all of our subjects, not just somebody's old throwaways. Desks, paper, blackboards, erasers, maps, chalk. Her voice trailed off as she glued the second book. Biting the hand that feeds you. That's what you're doing, Mary Logan. Biting the hand that feeds you.
Can you imagine, after having read Roll of Thunder, being in that era, in that part of the world, what it would mean to you?
I would say no, because the advantages that we have today, we would not be able to do in that time. Like us going to good schools and having a good education and able to get fresh books and stuff. And in Roll of Thunder, they were not like the black kids have to get books passed on to other white schools, but they would be all torn and not in good shape.
And how would that make you feel if you got crummy third-hand books?
It would make me feel upset because it would put my self-esteem down because it would feel like I'm really nothing because they're just doing it just to do it because they don't probably want to throw out books, just give it to the black kids.
I will actually feel really upset and frustrated that they're giving me third-hand books because it's not fair back then, how the white kids, they get the perfectly good books and brand new books, and how the black kids get ripped, torn up books, because that shows how people don't care about the black people and that the black people don't deserve nothing new or no respect. That will actually make me feel really upset because no one should ever get discriminated like that. All people should be treated fairly with respect and humility, and no one should ever have to go through that.
Even if you were to make a virtual game of how it felt to be back then, no one can ever feel now the amount of pain people back then had to go through being a slave and getting your entire life taken away by people who are too lazy to work for themselves.
Talk to me about the Logan family and their dynamics.
So the Logan family was, I would say, a little wealthier than the regular blacks because her Uncle Hammer, he was a soldier, so he had money, and he was able to buy himself stuff that white people would buy themselves. Cassie's family was not sharecroppers. They owned their own house and stuff, so they were able to make money for themselves.
Who did you like in the story?
I liked Cassie because she was really independent and she wasn't afraid to tell people off because she was being judged.
We mentioned that she had a bit of an anger management issue. Did that bother you?
Kind of. Yeah, a lot.
Do you have anger management issues?
Not really, but sometimes my anger can go a little off, but usually I know how to control it, so not that much.
How do you control your anger? Because I don't do a very good job.
I control my anger by just ignoring things that makes me upset, just thinking about stuff that I like my family, my friends, and that just calms me down a little.
Who was your favorite character?
I think it's CJ because he's the wild friend that everybody, you always got that wild friend in the group. So I can relate to him a little bit because I'm the fun friend that always get into different kinds of things.
Well, he got into all kinds of trouble. Are you getting into trouble left and right also?
No, I just kind of relate to him because he's the crazy friend that everybody has in the group, and everybody has to make sure that person is okay before they get in trouble and help them get out of trouble.
Sometimes I think of myself as a crazy energetic person, and teaches the same thing as that. He goes super crazy, makes a lot of jokes, not horrible, my jokes, and
How are your jokes horrible?
In fifth grade, I made bad puns.
Like?
Okay, what did the lettuce say to the kidnapper?
I have no idea. What?
Let us go.
Do you get in trouble like TJ does?
No.
Did this book remind you of anything else you've ever read?
It reminded me of the Frederick Douglass story, but it was taking place in different points of time. One was taken before slavery was abolished, and one was taken after slavery abolished. But they were still getting treated the same way even after slavery was abolished.
In any way, no one should have slaves because you're depriving people of the freedom God gave us. After God gave us the world to be free and have fun, but people just taking advantage of that in stories, it makes no sense because that's really messed up.
Writer Mildred D. Taylor is nearly 80 these days and rarely gives interviews, so we called upon a literary scholar.
Mildred Taylor is a lovely, lovely person.
Dr. Diane Johnson Feelings is a writer and professor of English at the University of South Carolina.
She's a citizen of the world. She served as a Peace Corps volunteer. One of the things I find most interesting about her is that she says that she feels compelled by the spirits of her ancestors to write these stories. In 1976, when Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry was published, I said that I wanted to show Black heroes and heroines in my books, men and women who were missing from books I read as a child. I also said I wanted to write a truthful history of what life was like for Black people in America. The truth includes the N-word. It inflicted great pain, but it is a truth that needs to be told. I do not promote the word, but not to include it in my writing is to whitewash history, and that I will not do, unquote. So she is a writer who deals with truth, and she knows that children can handle truth. And, I believe, and I think a lot of other people believe too, that it's easier to deal with some things through literature and art rather than experience those things yourself. It's important that her work is truthful. And part of her work being truthful is her never stereotyping any characters. So she has Black characters who have redeeming qualities and Black characters who are irredeemable. I shouldn't say that because everybody's redeemable, but Black characters who are not the nicest people. She has white characters who are lovable and worthy of respect and who accord everybody, the respect that any human being deserves. But she also has white characters who are despicable racists. So she's generous and truthful with her writing.
You guys were complaining a little earlier about the ending of this book.
The ending of this book was why would they end it off like that? We have to read the next book to see what happened.
There wasn't really much detail of what was happening, and I thought there was going to be a little more going on, they were going to explain a little more what was going to happen, but that didn't really turn out.
Well, I don't like the end of the book so much.
Now, your complaint with the book is that it leaves you hanging there. You don't know what's going to happen next, but I know you are a Harry Potter fan. Why is this book different? Because the Harry Potter series, there's 1,000,001 books. There's also a whole series about the Logan family. So what's the difference for you?
The difference for me is that, Harry Potter books, it leads up to, one and another. But it will give you, a little more detail before you read the other books so you know what's going on. And Roll of Thunder, it just left you with a cliffhanger that you have to read the other book to find out what happened.
Even though the ending, I didn't like what they did to TJ, it was still a great book because it teaches you all about slavery back then and how many advantages people take advantage of. People take advantage of what they have now, but they don't realize how horrible it was back then to be a Black person because you be deprived of having friendship with people or having a life.
What is your very favorite book?
So my favorite book is Chains, because from that book you can really understand like what people went through back then. And from that book you learn a lot of history that actually happened in real life.
And Chains by Lori Hulse Anderson is one of our Book Club for Kids selections, and we will include a link on our website to that episode. That's bookclubforkids.org. Favorite book?
I think one of my favorite books has to be the Apollo books, the series, because I can't just pick one. I love it because I like learning more about Greek mythology. It's like something you don't really get to do on a regular basis. It's like an outlet for me to like relax and just enjoy it.
My favorite book, like 10 out of 10, is The Giver. It's like the craziest thing ever about thinking, what if you were in a society in the same thing, where your mind was different, and the fact that they actually like, kill babies who don't grow right is so messed up. And I loved how the main character, how he went on his entire journey to save a little baby from getting killed because he cared about him so much, and the fact that he used all of his powers from his memory to help him give the baby the life what he deserves, and also giving his memory to someone else. It puts you like in their shoes. You can see like what if you were in their shoes, and also it's like what would happen if your society was like that, and then you have a bunch of thoughts about it. Like no one wants to be in a society like that.
What about you, Tracy Lay? Got a favorite book?
My favorite book of all time is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. I have read this book over and over and over again, and I love this book because it tells the story of 3 completely different creatures, a girl, a pig, and a spider, and how the friendship and love that exist among them is repeatedly put into action to save one of their lives, the effect that love has on those around them, and then how that loving friendship is passed on to the next generation.
Now, Dr. Diane Johnson-Feelings, like just about everybody else on the show, says it is hard to pick one favorite book. So as a literary historian, she decided to tell us about the Brownies book.
Okay, so the Brownies book was a children's magazine for kiddies from 6 to 16. That's how it was marketed. And it was a beautiful magazine that came out every month for 2 years, 1920 and 1921. And it included stories, art by African American artists, current events. So they were ahead of their time, making sure that their young Black readers and readers from around the world were familiar with what was going on internationally that was connected to the struggle in the United States. So this reminds me of the current Black Lives Matter movement, which has taken fire all around the world. So if people have a chance, I'd like for them to pick up the best of the Brownies book to see what African American children and young adults were reading in 1920 and 1921, and which is partly responsible for the blossoming of African American children's books.
We'll have a list of everybody's favorite book at our website, bookclubforkids.org. And if you'd like to be on the show, just have an adult send us an email to kitty@bookclubforkids.org, and we will send out all the information. That's kitty@bookclubforkids.org. Thanks this week to producer Ilse Setziel. Brandon Baker composed our theme with additional music from Charles Nillman. Emma Steinkeller designed our logo. Thanks this week to Dr. Diane Johnson-Feelings and to Kelly Starling-Lyons at thebrownbookshelf.com. And thanks to celebrity reader Tracy Lay. And of course, thanks to our readers this week, Samantha, Shannon, and Jalen from Immaculate Conception School. And thanks to Liz Nuzzles for bringing us to the Bronx. We have a free newsletter for teachers, parents, and librarians full of free tips about how to turn kids into lifelong readers, and you can sign up at the website, bookclubforkids.org. That's also where we have free curriculum for many of our episodes. And if you're looking for a way to introduce civics into your classroom, check out our other podcast, The Fina Mendoza Mysteries. There's also a 32-page teacher's guide full of information about Congress. It has quizzes, writing exercises, even recipes that turn into fractions practice. And it's available at Amazon, The Teacher's Guide to Welcome to Washington, Fina Mendoza. Coming soon as well, a new Fina Mendoza episode designed to help teachers talk to their students about the attack at the U.S. Capitol. I'm Kitty Feldy. Thanks so much for listening.